The following is meant for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not meant to establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please consult your mental health provider for your mental health needs. Hello, welcome to Chez Eric, my home, where we talk about psychiatry and religion with a focus on how to apply it to your life. My name is Dr. Eric, and I'm a psychiatrist who happens to be religious, and I'm creating this space to talk about these concepts that we really don't have a lot of opportunity to talk about it. So this particular series is on William James's The Varieties of Religious Experience, and we are going through lecture 9 today on conversion. And conversion is a pretty interesting topic. Last time we introduced the concept and we had the idea of, understanding that we have different groups in our minds. And then we kind of tapered off to talk about what happens when someone's saying one thing and then doing something else. And now today, William James kind of expresses what he thinks is happening in that situation. So William James makes a very interesting observation that people, or a construct, not maybe observation, whatever. He has this interesting construct where whatever we're doing, there's always something at the center of our attention, and there's also something in the periphery, all right? So with the example we had before about the president going hunting with a fishing pole and a gun, and then a canoe or a paddle or something, and he's not the presidency is in the back of his mind, but the fishing is in the front of his mind, the center of his energy. And so William James discusses that at all moments in our time, we have things that are in the center of our focus and the center of our energy. And then we have things that are in the periphery and in the just wishful thinking, on the edges of our focus. And this would kind of explain why someone can have wishful thinking like, I'm going to go study, and then in actuality they just end up binge watching TV and whatever. Because the TV becomes the center of their energy, the center of what they want to do. And then the studying is actually at the periphery if we're really looking at it based on their actions. And so he uses this analogy of hot and cold. Things that are in the center of our energy are very, very hot, and things at the periphery are very, very cold. And a person can shift their hot and cold. It can be very rapid. Like 1 minute you care about one particular thing, another minute you don't care about as much, and go back and forth. But transitions tend to be more permanent with being hot, and you transition to another thing that's very, very hot. And also it can be explained if someone has a crisis suddenly that's very, very sudden. So for example, let's say most people don't think about their death. It's not in the center of their understanding about the world. But then if they go into an accident or if they get into a near-death experience, death becomes the center of their attention. And that's kind of because of the crisis that they experienced before. And how to deal with that conflict, that becomes a discussion of, psychology and how that works and whatnot. So instead of hot place versus cold, we can talk about instead the idea of priorities. Something is a higher priority in your life versus a lower priority in your life. And William James calls this higher priority state as the habitual center of a person's personal energy. Habitual center of your personal energy. And so there's a big difference between what is at the center of your energy versus what is at the edges. You might say that you want to put family first, but if your actions always like put family to the side for your job, then that is more telling of what is actually in the peripheral versus what is at the center. And those that are converted are people who used to have religious ideas and concepts at the periphery, but then suddenly through either a very gradual or very intense and sudden process or sudden experience, the religious ideas become at the center of it in a permanent way, in a more permanent way that it becomes a transition. And have you experienced that yourself? Or if you're religious, what have you experienced? Has it been gradual, like you kind of growing up and then eventually you learn to care about religion more? Or has it been sudden? Did you have an experience? I know a couple of friends of mine say that God spoke to them directly and that's why they believe and they can never deny. And that's kind of their way of their conversion process. And these are people who he says they said they never believed in God before. It was at the periphery. It was at the edge. So the thing is that James says, if you try and look for a psychological reason for this shift, the psychology isn't really able to explain the shift itself. Neither an outside observer can say explicitly why the shift happened, right? And all we know is that someone used to have, didn't really care about religion, suddenly they do, all right? William James says this, but I imagine Freud would disagree. Freud would say that there is an sort of an underlying psychological reason why people take on religion, and there is something that it's satisfying, and we can actually find the mechanisms that exist. But for now, let's allow Freud and James to just disagree. And, it's really hard to say because there isn't really any truly objective way to know explicitly what is happening in someone's mind. So the best we have is what people say and what people do, and trying to match the two together to figure out what's going on. Nevertheless, we'll kind of explore this a little bit later, I suppose, but James kind of then goes on to say that with the psychological concepts that are happening in our minds as we convert from religion being at the periphery to religion being at the center of how he's defining conversion, he says that there is this, he says, mechanical equilibrium. So what does he mean by that? He says that the way he structures the mind is that we have impulses that we want to do, but then we also have checks on those impulses that we prevent ourselves from doing it. And then a weakened mind, say through an experience or sudden emotional shock or new perceptions, right? The center of gravity can change. The center of the hot place, the priorities, can change based on the state of your mind. And then you can form new associations and habits as the equilibrium changes between these inhibitory and sort of impulsive tendencies. And so he's then kind of saying that these influences are often subconscious or half unconscious. And so someone with a fully developed subconscious, they might have these motives and ideas happening in the background, and then suddenly it rushes to the center of their mind. And people who don't have as robust of a subconscious sort of mechanism, they'll have their religious conversion a little bit more, a little more gradual. That's what he's proposing. Not exactly the concept we have nowadays, but it is interesting. We do have this idea of a subconscious overall when we're talking about psychology. So that's how he understands, as part of the transformation process as it relates to psychology, it's that we have our list of priorities, the hot and the cold, and then religion used to be part of the cold in the periphery, and then all of a sudden becomes hot. And what is that process? What's going on? He explores that in the next parts moving forward. So I hope you found that interesting. Let me know your thoughts, right? Let me know what you think about this construct of how the mind works. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Does it actually match with your experiences? Because if it doesn't match with your experiences, then we've got to revisit this thing entirely, right? So that's actually the most important part. He's not the end-all, say-all of religious experience. He is just someone who's providing his expertise so that we can reflect on our own experiences. So yeah, like and subscribe. I'll talk to you next time. Bye. Hey, how's it going? Check out my new website. It's available now. You can learn more about me. You can also check out some things I'll be offering in the future, webinars, books, and whatnot. It's a fancy website with a lot of moving parts, designed by someone who's very, very talented. So check it out when you get a chance. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.